Hi, everybody. Today I want to talk about color components and dive into it just a little bit. I mentioned some of the components of color before. I just want to really get into it a little more and then show you the assignment. I'll read it to you after I show you a few slides. And then, of course, we'll do a demo video. So let's take a look. Color has three components, as I've mentioned. There's hue, value, and saturation. So hue is the name we give the parent color again. Hues are pure colors. So green is a hue, and then adding white to it makes something like the color lime green. So white is a tint of green. Um, Shading green would be to add black, or adding gray would be toning green. And I already mentioned that when we're talking about secondaries or tertiaries, um, secondaries are just their name, so green, orange, and violet. When we talk about tertiaries, we always put the primary color's name first. So red, orange instead of orange, red. So value, we've done the really fun assignment about value, and that's colors relative darkness or lightness. And as mentioned, colors will have their own native values. So blues are generally darker than reds. And we examine these and translate them through the grayscale. And of course, value is always relative, right? If we put a blue next to a violet, the blue will appear brighter than it is compared to a grayscale. And chroma might be the most difficult one to conceptualize. A lot of people confuse chroma with brightness. And chroma is a color's saturation. So it's measured as a color moves away from gray. So it's intensity of color, not brightness of color. So low chroma colors would be called weak, where those of a high chroma would be highly saturated. So when I mentioned lime green, we would think of lime green as a weaker saturation, whereas a pure green would most likely be a higher saturation, higher chroma. And we might call that green vivid or strong. So all the colors on your color wheel are the pure hues. They're at their native value, and they're all of very high saturation. So I just want to look at this other painting of mine, and you can see this is at full saturation. All the colors are their original intensity. If we suck away the saturation, we can see that all the values remain the same, but the colors become much more dull and muted. So the saturation is gone. So here's the original, and then we desaturate the whole thing. Remember this. Tint is when white is added to a hue, tone is when gray is added to a hue, and shade is when black is added to a hue. So hue's the name we give a pure color, value is brightness, and chroma is saturation, and that can be affected by tinting, toning, and shading, and so can value be affected, and saturation. But the parent hue is still within whatever color we see. Okay, so then the assignment is all about saturation and contrast of saturation. So you'll create a tonal chart to explore saturation. You'll take one pure hue, so you could even just do a color straight out of the tube. And I suggest you choose a color that's sort of a middle value. So like the red or the blue or the violet. The really deep color like the viridian that you have won't really work well because its value is very dark. So we'll see very, very dark desaturation across this scale we'll make. So you'll start with the pure color, and then you'll make a scale where it desaturates. And the way you do this is you take the pure color, and then you mix up a gray that is the same value as that pure color. So if we've got something like a pure blue, and we mix up a gray, that gray is going to be somewhere in the middle of the grayscale to match the brightness of the blue. And then what you do is gradually add that gray to the blue so you make a scale of desaturation without change in value. So in the next video, I'll show you examples and show you what I mean with the paint.